had a bit of a medical emergency, but the official word is that somebody passed out, and they're doing fine and been revived, and we're going to make it okay. So, there you go. Yeah, those of you who have been with Mars Hill from the beginning, we've had numerous medical situations like this before. So some of you are like, been through that. Others are like, what in the world is this? So anyway, welcome to Mars Hill. When you gather this many people, this many Sundays in a row, all sorts of things happen. And we actually have a whole team of EMTs, paramedics, etc., and they're on rotation, and they sit in a back section over there. So whenever there's an emergency like that, they immediately rush over and take over, and we have a whole system. So they stepped in, and they performed brilliantly. So well done to all the EMTs who are working on that. And so there we have it. Let me just say a word of prayer, and then we'll get rolling. God, that's unexpected. It kind of jars us. And we thank you that our sister has recovered. And whatever brought this on, help them to sort it through and to see how to prevent such things. Thank you that we were spared something far worse. So as we finish up singing, as we head into some study and some other things we're going to cover, we thank you that you gathered us on this hot July night. We are expectant. We need to hear from you. We want hope. We want truth. And in Jesus' name, everybody said, amen. Can we all do this? Excellent. Yeah, there we go. Kind of get the weirdness vibe out of the room. Maybe crack some doors for a second. Get all that out. I want to invite you to turn to the book of Leviticus, chapter 25. Get the weirdness out of the room. Turn to Leviticus 25. We are doing a series called God is Green, and we're wrapping it up. This is the 5th Sunday of God is Green, and we're going to wrap it up. And Matt Krick is with me, and we have lots of ground to cover. And we have been talking about our responsibility to care for the earth and how this is deep in the Scriptures and deep in the human responsibility that God has given us. So we've explored this from all sorts of angles. We've studied scriptural passages and theologically and then very practically, and we've discovered all sorts of things this month. And our goal tonight is to give you all sorts of practical ways to go green. And what we've discovered over the past month is that you all have extraordinary wisdom on this. And so we've amassed all sorts of websites and resources and things that people are doing in the community, involving everything from food to diapers to everything in between. So we're going to cover some of that after we look at a few passages of Scripture. And then next week, Ed Dobson will be teaching. Yes, the beloved Pastor Ed. And then the following week, have any of you read anything by Lauren Winner, Mudhouse Sabbath Girl Meets God? Lauren will be here 2 weeks from today teaching. And her new book is called Real Sex. So you got that going for you. And then the following 2 weeks, Marvin Williams will be here. Marvin was here last summer, and people are like, when is Marvin coming back? He'll be here the last 2 weeks of August. And then Labor Day weekend, I will be back teaching, and away we go into the fall. So Leviticus 25. You ready to go? Thank you. Good man. Lord said to Moses on Mount Sinai, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord. So some sort of relationship between the soil and God. For 6 years sow your fields, and for 6 years prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But in the 7th year the land is to have a year of Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and female servants, and the hired worker and temporary resident who live among you, as well as for your livestock and the wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. So there's this teaching about the Sabbath. Work 6 days, rest on a 7th. Work 6, rest 7th. Work 6, rest 7th. Then in Leviticus, God says, now with the land, work the land for 6 years, but then on the 7th year, leave the land. Do not sow or plant or work the soil. Now this is Agriculture 101. soil gets depleted of its minerals and its nutrients and its ability to produce a crop. And so this is just simply Agriculture 101. If you keep trying to get a crop from this land, the soil is going to get depleted. It's going to get tired. So every 6 years, take a year and let the soil rest. Anybody who knows farming knows this is true. It's been true for thousands of years. And so what God is essentially commanding the people is have a relationship with the soil in which you do not exploit it for more than it can produce. We would use the term sustainability. Live with the earth in such a way that the way that you treat the earth is sustainable. Don't abuse it or exploit it for more than it can produce. Now turn with me to 2 Chronicles chapter 36. We have studied in detail the exile and how these people who God had given this divine calling to had in some ways failed. They had exploited people. They had begun to have slaves. How King Solomon was building palaces and a temple using forced labor slaves. And we talked about how King Solomon had become an arms dealer and how these people who were supposed to defend the cause of the widow, the orphan, and the stranger in their midst had become exploiting and abusing people on a very systemic level. And we talked about how God allowed them to be hauled away to the foreign land of Babylon. But there's this fascinating explanation that's added after the point about the exile. Notice 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 15. The heading is the fall of Jerusalem, and how this king Nebuchadnezzar came, verse 20, and he carried into exile to Babylon the remnant who escaped from the sword. So basically anybody who wasn't killed was hauled away, and they became servants to him and his successors. Verse 21, the land enjoyed its Sabbath rests. All the time of its desolation it rested until the 70 years were completed in fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah. What does the text say? It says the people did not have a respectful relationship with the soil. They did not give it the rest it needed every 7 years. And so when these people are hauled away, it says finally the land got a chance to rest. And in fact, it says the people were away for an amount of years it took for them to make up for all of the years of rest the land didn't have. This is an environmental component to the exile. These people were not only using slaves and exploiting people, but they exploited the earth. And when they were hauled away to Babylon, finally the soil had a chance to rest. Sustainability in regards to how we care for the earth is not a new idea. There are commands and warnings and judgments about people and their relationship with the soil from the very beginning of the Scriptures.
Okay, now flip a few chapters back to 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Let's look together at a verse that God shows his heart for his people and for the land itself. God is speaking to Solomon after the temple has been built, and in 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14, God says, "If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land." God is expressing at the very core what he desires for us as people and what he desires for the land. He's saying that if you will turn, if you will change your ways, I will bring healing. Now, we can read this text in a number of different ways, but for our purposes tonight, I want us to think about ways in which we have sinned against God and sinning against the land. And for the most part, for many of us, these things are areas that we've just been ignorant to. We're not aware, and so we're trying to become more aware so we can turn, so we can change, because God's heart is to bring healing to us, but not only to us, to the very land itself. God is calling us to change practices, change ways we live, change ways we treat the earth itself so that it honors him and he can heal it. Look at the words of Jesus, what Jesus says in Matthew 5. "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." Jesus is drawing a connection between our very attitudes and our inheritance. And he's saying that he's calling us to embody his way, the way of healing, the way of peace, the way of self-giving love, the way of meekness, which is a gentleness, a humility. It's embracing all that Jesus is in his humility, in his self-giving love, and in terms of the earth itself, to tread lightly, to be gentle with the earth itself and care for it the way God calls us to care for it. And we will inherit the earth.
Now, I want to invite you to take out your sheet that you were handed when you came in. It says, God is green, the new seatbelt. And Matt and I are now going to fire hose you with a verb, fire hose you with all sorts things. Much of this wisdom comes from you. Over the past few weeks, there's been just a flood of insight and wisdom and things that you are actually doing to go green. And much of this is just our attempt to kind of bring it all together and then kind of arrange it, hopefully in some helpful ways. So first, we're going to talk about energy, then we're going to talk about food, and then we're going to talk about transportation. So energy, food, transportation, and then we're talking about some things that will be available in the hallway afterwards, and then 3 other things, and then 2 other things, and then we'll be done. And it should only take about 4 hours, so we're pretty excited about that. Now, first, energy. There's all sorts of fascinating little things that can be done every single day. Some people estimate that 25% of your energy bill comes from phantom power. So there are many who think that, like the light on your television when it's off, but it's still plugged in, and so there's a small little faint light, or your DVD player that has that clock that's blinking the wrong time all the time because you don't know how to set it properly, and your 8-year-old son does. All of those appliances that are on even when they're off, that's called phantom power. And they're now saying that for many, 25% of their energy bill is simply things that are on, but they aren't really on. One suggestion is simply a power strip that can be turned off and on, like your computer when it's on sleep. Well, just a power strip that when you're not using it, you turn it completely off, could cut your bill and save money by 25%. Why don't you tell them about the green energy program?
Okay. There's something my wife and I found out about a couple of years ago that Consumers Energy offers to its customers. So if you get your electricity from Consumers Energy, check out on your sheet here, number 2, consumersenergy.com. Look for the green energy program. Basically, what you can do is you can get all of your energy that you use, all the electricity you use, consumers will replace with renewable energy. And it costs a little extra on your electric bill. For my wife and I, it's about $3-4 extra per month, but it's worth it to us to know that all the electricity we're using is being replaced by renewable energy. A big thing about electricity, though, is to use less, turning off lights, and just consuming less. I think that one of the best things we can do for the environment is to consume less across the board, not just electricity, but things in general. When you look to buy something, do I really need this or not? And how will it affect the earth? But the Green Generation program is an awesome way to go. We were thinking, what would it look like if tomorrow thousands of people called up consumers and said, I want the Green Energy program? Thousands of people tomorrow. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Tell them Matt Krick sent you.
Yes.
How much extra is it on your energy bill?
About $3 to $4.
$3 to $4.
$5 sometimes.
So it's a giant sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it depends on how much electricity you use too. But yeah.
And if you call them and you get on hold, it's just because other people in the room right now are talking to them. So that will all kind of even itself out. Now, next slide. There's all sorts of extra things, like if we all used Energy Star appliances, it would be the equivalent of taking 3 million cars off the road. You'll notice when you buy appliances, some of them are Energy Star rated. On your sheet right there, number 1 is energystar.gov, which will give you more information on that. Next slide. If every household in America switched out one incandescent bulb for a compact fluorescent bulb, this is if every household switched one bulb to a more eco-friendly bulb, it would reduce energy consumption as much as taking 1 million cars off the road. So it's these tiny little changes that add up to absolutely massive impact. Or we could move to recycling. An aluminum can like this, recycling aluminum uses 95% less energy than making new aluminum. So every can that doesn't get recycled, added up over time, is absolutely massive destruction to the earth. So a couple other things about recycling, which I find absolutely fascinating. A ton of recycled paper saves 17 trees, 3 cubic yards of landfill space, 7,000 gallons of water, 4,200 kilowatt hours of energy, which is enough to heat a home for half a year, 390 gallons of oil, and it prevents 60 pounds of air pollutants. Yeah, and this is just recycling paper. Or if you put it in terms of percentages, if our recycling rate increased from 30% to 60%, we would save 315 million barrels of oil in a year. That's just an increase from 30% to 60%. Now, Paul is one of the wonderful folks around here who take care of our building, the building formerly known as the Grand Village Mall. And Paul has a list of things that we're doing around here in the building to be more sustainable. We have these paper gators, paper recyclers. We have 3, and we have a 4th on order in our parking lot. It's right over in this corner, and you can put all your paper there. This is for our whole church, so you can come in during the week, or you on a Sunday can pull up over there. All of your paper can be placed there, and then we take the paper and we sell it at a recycling center, and we give the money to the Dorchester House Ministries in the Black Hills. So all of the stuff, every little scrap of paper that you could toss, you can recycle, and we'll use it to help people who are under-resourced, which you think is a pretty fair ideal. Now, we have 3, a 4th is on order, and our goal is to get at least 8 of these containers. So all of us are recycling all of our paper, which we think is a good goal. Are you with me? Yeah, and that is actually worth something. We recycle cardboard here. We have a cardboard dumpster. And then all batteries from clocks and mics, etc., are recycled. And then all pop cans are collected, and then they are taken care of by the Signers Ministries to fund some of their service projects. And Paul's estimation is that our building right now is somewhere around 85% recyclable, and the goal in the near future is to get it to 100. So we're just exploring every way that we can. And then even today we were looking at how to have a center where people can toss old cell phones, and then those can be turned in and used for all sorts of great purposes. So hopefully there'll be news coming on that in the near future. And then, like you'll notice on your list, how many of you just love junk mail and think, I'd like more junk mail sent my way? You can request more junk mail. Number 3, dmaconsumers.org/CGI/off mailing list, off being the key word, is a website you can register to cut down on the junk mail that's sent to you. Yes. That is a big one. So if you want to cut down on that sort of thing, that's all based around the power of recycling, which we see as huge, absolutely huge. Now, let's move to food. Notice verse 5. Oh, I'm doing that all day long. Verse 5. Notice number 5. Localharvest.com is a great website that can tell you, and depending on the region, area where you're living, where the nearest farmer's market is and how you can get connected with people who are growing food in your area. We talked last week about how the average meal on your plate has traveled 1,200 miles from pasture to plate. And we talked about how there's the cost of things, and then there's the cost of things. And any way in which you can eat locally simply cuts down on the cost. It cuts down on carbon emissions. It cuts down on gas costs. It just is better for the earth. It's better for our wallets. It's better for everything. Localharvest.com is a great one. And then one of the reasons Matt is teaching, not only because of his keen theological mind for these things, but Matt and his wife Jenna live this. They live this beautiful life in harmony with the earth. And Matt has taught me more than anybody about sustainable kinds of living. And so when he talks about this, it's not theory, it's actually how he lives. Will you tell us a bit about your garden, what you grow, and how that works?
Yeah. One thing I want to say before I talk about the way my wife and I live is that we recognize this is a journey. And so we're not trying to guilt trip anybody or say that we've arrived personally. We have a long way to go, and we have a lot to learn. And so my hope is that people will move a click forward in your own journey. But one thing we've been doing for the past few years is growing our own food. We have an organic garden where we grow all kinds of vegetables, and we've been eating a lot of food from our garden recently. It's been harvesting a number of different vegetables out of our garden and eating our own food. We also have chickens, and so we get eggs from our chickens, and we have 22 chickens. that produce about 15 to 20 eggs a day.
What's 22? Is that like a pride or a gaggle? Or what is that of chickens?
I have no idea.
Pack?
Sure.
Okay. And how many eggs do they produce a day?
About 15 to 20. So, no, we don't eat 15 to 20 eggs a day. There's plenty of folks on staff here that love to buy some of our eggs from us, so we sell our leftover eggs to other staff here. Another thing that I choose personally to do is to be a vegetarian because of the way animals are treated and the land is treated in the meat industry. I choose not to eat meat. I'm not trying to convince anyone to be a Thank you. I'm not trying to convince anyone to be a vegetarian. But one question I would ask is there ways you can think about the possibility of eating less meat and consider where your food is coming from and the ramifications of it? But again, I'm not trying to convince anyone to be a vegetarian. In fact, my wife was a vegetarian until she got pregnant. And our beautiful daughter is 5 months old now, and so my wife can... Thank you. Yes, we're very excited about that. So Jenna eats meat about once a week. So those are some of the things we're doing food-wise.
And did you used to grow your own food? How long have you had a garden?
Yeah, 3-4 years.
Before that, did you have any experience in this?
No.
So you have no idea what you're doing?
Yeah, so if I can grow food, you can grow food.
And how often do you go to the grocery store?
It's very rare, but I have this addiction to avocados, so I need to pick up avocados. And I can't grow Oberon. I haven't figured out how to do that, so so I have to stop by the store to pick up Oberon every now and then.
You could have a bumper sticker that was like, even my beer is local.
Even my beer is local. That's right.
So you literally would go long stretches without ever having to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. Where do you live? A secret, undisclosed location. If all of your eggs are missing tomorrow, it's just because we found out. You have eggs? How many eggs? Matt had an interesting point about meat, and I think this is fascinating if you get into how meat is produced. 1 acre of land can produce 50,000 pounds of tomatoes, 40,000 pounds of potatoes, 30,000 pounds of carrots, or 250 pounds of beef. And secondly, in terms of water and beef production, it takes 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef and 25 gallons of water to produce a pound of wheat. So when you eat less meat, or actually more specifically, how is the meat raised is probably the most penetrating question. Is this an industrial meat farm, or is this a more sustainable meat production kind of thing? And even these are just the kind of questions that you'll find all sorts of fascinating truths, and like some wonderful, actually, farmers in our congregation this morning were saying it's not necessarily the meat, but they said you have to ask deeper questions about what was the meat fed and how does this particular kind of form versus this deal with the environment. But meat takes a toll on the environment. So there's a couple things on energy. There's a couple things on food. And now let's talk about transportation. There's a couple fascinating things in regards to cars. If every American's tires were properly inflated, it would save more than 4 million gallons of gas a day. I mean, that's just like routine car maintenance, like having your tires properly inflated. It's these small little things, light bulbs and tire pressure, that have these massive impact. And so when people have kind of a fatalistic despair, there's nothing we can do, there's thousands of little things we can do every day that make a big difference. And then, Matt, talk to us about transportation.
Okay. A couple of things thinking about transportation. Rob talked last week about just driving less. So considering, do I really need to go here or there? Do I need to drive there? Can I walk or ride a bike? That's huge. Another thing is to just drive slower. If you're anything like me, you can't afford to run out and buy a hybrid, and so you need to drive slower, and you'll get better gas mileage. I get about 5 miles to the gallon, better fuel economy by slowing my speed down. I used to be the guy on the expressway that got upset at the guy going 65 and having to whip around him. Now I'm the guy that you get upset at for going 65 on the expressway. I was driving here this morning and taking my leisurely time on the expressway going 65, and my friend Jim Keat flies by me at 90 miles an hour. He's here.
Is he here? What kind? Did you know it was Matt? You were going 80? So, Matt, you drive an Oldsmobile?
Yeah, 91 Oldsmobile.
A 91 Oldsmobile. What color is it?
Blue.
Okay, so if we get stuck behind you, everybody, it has something to do with God. Pretty much what you need to know there.
We have an 01 Corolla, too. It's blue also. Must be.
Okay.
So those are some things about driving. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the future because there's a lot of talk out there about fuels for the future, and we need to be thinking about these things and ways we should engage and things we should be aware of. Because the biggest thing that is moving forward the quickest for fuels for the future is corn-based ethanol. And I've done a fair bit of research on ethanol, and I would encourage you to research it as well. But the research I've found points to ethanol not being a very good idea. And there's several reasons for that. One is that it affects the global poor in major ways. Corn is a staple food for the global poor. And corn prices have already skyrocketed on the global market, and so it's causing the poor to not be able to afford a staple food. It's also affecting the price of wheat and other grains that are staple foods for the global poor that can no longer afford it. I have a couple quotes I want to show you from an article entitled "How Biofuels Could Starve the Poor." This one says, filling the 25-gallon tank of an SUV with pure ethanol requires over 450 pounds of corn, which contains enough calories to feed one person for a year. So to think about, do I fill up my tank with enough fuel to last me a week or feed a person for a year? Anytime we move to food-based energy, it's going to cause a problem. And so that's one major reason. Another major reason is because of the amount of energy used to put into planting and harvesting corn is phenomenal. Look at this quote. Soybeans and especially corn are row crops that contribute to soil erosion and water pollution and require large amounts of fertilizer, pesticides, and fuel to grow, harvest, and dry. They are the major cause of nitrogen runoff of the type that has created the so-called dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, an ocean area the size of New Jersey that has so little oxygen it can barely support life. So you can see if we increase the amount of corn we grow, which we would need to do if we want to move in that direction, it's going to cause even more major problems. And so this runoff that mainly comes out of the Mississippi River and into the Gulf of Mexico is called a dead zone. And basically the fishing industries in that area have gone belly up because the fish can't survive there any longer. And so this is another major issue, an environmental issue. Another issue is if we increased the corn production, we're going to destroy mass ecosystems and there will be mass habitat loss if we want to produce enough ethanol to fuel our tanks. And another final reason is basically the amount of energy it takes to convert corn into ethanol. Requires a lot of burning of either natural gas or coal, and so then it basically makes it a wash of what would be cleaner coming out of your tank is actually putting air pollution into the air in order to make corn into ethanol. So some things on ethanol there. There's a whole bunch of other things I wish I had time to go into, but basically I think that the best option for the near future is the technology we have for plug-in hybrids. The technology is already there if one of the big major automobile industry would just mass-produce plug-in hybrids. They can get over 100 miles to the gallon. You plug them in at night. It's using energy that's already in the system, so you're not putting more air pollution in the air, and that would be an amazing way to go. A guy told me after the 9 o'clock that in the 70s he bought an electric car, not a hybrid electric, just an electric car, that would get 170 miles on a charge, and you could charge it to 80% capacity within half an hour in the 70s. And we're being told now by automakers that the technology doesn't exist for electric cars like that. So, interesting to think about.
Yes. Anybody seen the movie Who Killed the Electric Car?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Another thing about gas, since we're on the topic of gas. Gas is the primary thing that we use to heat our homes, and there are alternative ways to heat our homes. My wife and I have a high-efficiency wood-burning stove, but I know that not everybody wants to get into the physical work of cutting and splitting your own wood. So a great option, especially if you live in the city and you don't have room for wood, is a pellet stove. you can burn these wood pellets that they basically can make out of sawdust. And it's very clean, very energy efficient, and you can heat your home with a pellet stove. They're also making corn pellet stoves, but again, if you burn food to heat your home, you have the same problems that I just talked about with ethanol. So.
And Matt was saying there are pellet stoves now that do grass.
They're working on, grass pellets and cherry pits.
There's a pellet stove that keeps your house warm by burning cherry pits. So you can invite your friends over, and you can sit like in a semicircle in front of the stove. And then when someone's like, man, it's getting chilly in here, you can be like, and you don't even need TV at that point because you are totally living large. Number 4 on your list, Habitat for Humanity Restore. Like if you have some paint and you're thinking, this probably isn't something that I dig a hole in the backyard and just make it disappear. I have a friend who did that. And the Restore will take paint. And they'll take all sorts of things that normally you would either bury somewhere where no one would see it, or you would just put it in your trash and then put things over top of it, so hoping they didn't see it. And this is a conscience-free way to deal with some of those things where you're thinking, what do I do with that? It's great. It's on South Division. I just took some paint there the other day, and they took it, and that's a beautiful thing. 6, EchoCell is cell phones you don't know what to do with. 7 and 8, the Green Office and Rate It Green, are organizations devoted to helping businesses have ecological sustainability and all sorts of triple bottom line type practices, profit people in the earth. 9, if you're part of a business where you keep getting mail for a former employee, ecological mail. My personal favorite, number 10, treehugger.com. Treehugger.com is unbelievable. This is like the best minds, and they have like a section on transportation, a section on clothing, a section on political policy. I mean, it's just really extensive, and some of the freshest minds in terms of sustainability contributing there, all sorts of essays and news and new products and all that. 12 is lime.com, and lime.com actually has a section where you can take something that you don't think you should throw away but you don't know what to do with. You can type it in, and they will tell you how it can be recycled. So how many know Crocs are those rubber shoes that people wear kind of in battery-operated colors? Crocs, yes, that was an invitation to hold it above your head. Thank you. Lime.com, well, you know what Crocs are used for? Instead of throwing them, Crocs are ground up and are used to make children's playgrounds, the soft, kind of spongy floor in children's playgrounds. So that's why children's playgrounds smell. But like that would be an example where you're thinking, I don't know if this should be just tossed in the trash, and realize they'll give you an address to ship it to. And then, like if you have old running shoes and you're thinking, this doesn't seem right to just toss this. They have an address where you can send the running shoes, and the running soles are ground up to make like the new kinds of soccer fields with the little teeny black chunks that travel behind you for days on end after you've used one. Number 13, Earth Easy, is if you've had a sense like these chemicals and I'm cleaning my house, apartment with or whatever, they don't seem that safe. This is earth-friendly cleaning supplies they have recommended there. Then you have all sorts of websites on fair trade, Java for Justice. Number 19, G Diapers. And this is actually how to have some more earth-friendly diapers. And we actually have a whole underground mom diaper mafia group that's formed. And they're exploring all of these really innovative things to do with diapers because of the sense of it's not right how much diapers end up in our landfill. And through these doors, we'll tell you in a minute, everybody else, but they are meeting out there after each of the services. And I saw, this morning, lots of people exchanging ideas on that. And then all sorts of other websites on clothing, what you wear. 26, Floresta is an environmental group that works with microfinance. And then resources like For the Beauty of the Earth is an outstanding book by a Hope professor who I actually studied with in graduate school in Los Angeles named Stephen Boma Prediger. And this author, Stephen, he's actually going to be with us.
August 16th.
August 16th.
Thursday night.
On a Thursday night, he is going to be here speaking and answering questions like an Aeropagus down the hall. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to miss him. He's really at the forefront of a lot of this, especially in regards to how the Scriptures teach us about the earth. A book by Tree Robinson on saving God's green earth. And then Serve God, Save the Planet by our new friend, Dr. Matthew Sleeth, and Living the Good Life on God's Earth by a whole series of authors. So there's all sorts of endless resources. Immediately following this service and the other services this morning, through these doors to the left, and we have all sorts of folks from our community who are sharing things they're learning and ways you can get involved. And the diaper crew will be there And then Matt has written a whole theology of ecology, essentially, which is a whole way to understand how God sees the earth. And it's an excellent kind of essay, and it's available. You can get the Welcome Center online, anything like that. We've been talking about how God is green for the whole month. I was trying to think of how to wrap this series up and what my plea is to you, what the big idea is here. When I was a kid, and I would travel around in the car with my parents, when we would travel around in the Caprice Classic wagon, and yes, that is real wood on the sides. We had the bench seat in the front. How many of you grew up with the bench seat in the front? Give it up for the bench seat. And there was this armrest, and as a kid, the best thing in the world would be like a family car trip, to be sitting on the armrest in between my mom and dad. I have really fond memories of sitting right there between the two of them. As I reflect upon that, that was insanely dangerous. Okay? If the car had to deaccelerate rapidly, I would have been a blonde-haired projectile at that point who would have flown through the front of the car. But how many of you rode around with no seatbelt and climbed over the seats and all that? Yeah, because that's just, you didn't wear seatbelts. And then we started to hear statistics that when people were wearing a seatbelt, death rates in automobile accidents decreased significantly. And people started to say, hey, seatbelts save lives. Exactly, seatbelts save lives. And so people didn't wear seatbelts, and then all of a sudden they were educated that this is a matter of life and death, and all of a sudden we started wearing seatbelts. Now, the first seatbelts didn't really have a little give in them. They were basically just, you clip that thing on, you know what I mean? You forgot that thing was on, and that was a little bit more painful. And then, over time, they got the ones with the shoulder strap, and then some of them had that door thing, click. Give it. The first time I got in a car and it did that, and the driver was like, check me out. Mr. Jetson. And so now, when you get in a car, not only do you now, if you get in a car and don't, how many of you, if you get in a car and you don't put the seatbelt on, you immediately feel kind of vulnerable and naked, like something is wrong here. And now, our family car, it has the most obnoxious noise ever from automotive hell that like clings and clangs when you don't have your seatbelt on. You get in the car, it gives you like 5 seconds. Like it's like the car saying, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to get it on, buddy. And then I'm going to give you a noise. It's like and it's just, you can't even see straight with this noise on. Now, how did something go from no one did it to everyone does it, to you don't feel right if you're not doing it, to now, if you get caught by local law enforcement officials without it, click it or yes. How did something go from no one does it to everyone does it, to if you don't do it, you feel strange, to if it's illegal not to do it? And I have yet to see a protest over the seatbelt law. Like, fascist seatbelts. No, none of that. Just nothing. How is there that, in the course of less than a generation, there is that kind of change in our public consciousness about this issue? And I would argue it's because somebody framed it in its proper terms. This is a life and death issue. And I would submit to you that what we are waking up to is the way we have been treating the earth is a life and death issue. As we explored the past few weeks, in 2005, they do a random study of random umbilical cord blood of infants and discover that they have, on average, 200 toxic chemicals in them, many of them, 85% of them, carcinogens. Whoa, we're learning about waterways. I fly into L.A., I get my taxi in the lower level of LAX, and the moment the taxi pulls out out from underneath the overhang at the airport baggage claim, and I get out, my eyes immediately water and start to sting, and I can't even see the Santa Monica Mountains because of the smog. And so we brush up against it. Hey, this is serious. If somebody actually wants to argue with you that we're not doing some terrible things to our earth, this is somebody whose wealth and ignorance have simply isolated them from how serious it is. And way back in Leviticus, you have these calls from God to people to understand sustainability. And I would argue that going green is the new seatbelt. And that in the next few years, we are going to have to run everything we wear, eat, do, consume through the filter. How does this affect the earth? One estimate says that we are losing every single day 137 unique species of plant, insect, and animal. That has serious consequences for future generations. I would argue that caring for the earth is the new seatbelt. We're starting to realize that this is a sanctity of life issue. And in the next few years, we are going to have to think through, what did it cost, not just cost, but what did it cost for this shirt to be made, for this meal to be served to me, for this vehicle to get me from point A to point B. And wouldn't it be beautiful if Christians, instead of being behind and reacting, we're out in front leading the way, because there's been a call to care for the environment since the very beginning? Wouldn't it be brilliant if the followers of God were the ones who understood how deeply God cares for the earth and how central it is to the human task to care for the earth? Wouldn't it be brilliant if followers of Jesus were the ones modeling simplicity, less consumption, were more deeply tuned in to the rhythms of nature, were the people saying, hey, there's a better way to do that? Do you know that recycling creates 6 times more jobs than landfills? Caring for the earth is good for the economy. What if there were Christians who were using all of their ingenuity and entrepreneurial ability to say, we think this is something that Jesus would have us do? What if there were churches that were working through, how can we get our building to 100% recycling? How can we get our energy bill down so that we have more to give to the poor? It's time for the church to not sit and wait for how it's going to go, because it is going to go there. You can resist, or you can simply join in, so that when this is how everybody, and when it's illegal not to, we have been living this way for a while, can help bring people on. It's time to go green, because God is green. So let's pray, shall we? God, you've given us this big, beautiful earth, and in some way, it sustains us, it feeds us, it shelters us, the sun shines on us. We feel the water of the lake that refreshes us. You've given us this wonderful earth, and from the very beginning, you've just called us to exercise proper dominion over it, to care for it. And God, we want to be part of a whole new generation that stands up and accepts this divine responsibility and takes it seriously. God, please raise up the person who will invent the car that is eco-friendly. God, please raise up those people who will take the art of farming and show us how to eat in a way that provides the earth in a healthy way for the next generations. God, show us how to consume less appliances, what to plug in, what to unplug. God, show us the cost of things, and then the cost of things. God, we want to be part of a whole new generation that takes seriously the second command in the Scriptures, which is to have proper dominion over the earth. We acknowledge that you're green, and we want to be too. We thank you for Jesus, who gives us hope, for an open tomb, for a new creation, and for the inspiration that we can make 1,000 little changes as we take steps to be more true to the people you've created us to be. And in the strong, healing name of Jesus Christ, everybody said, amen. For giving an offering, there are